critical illness is tougher to get than life insurance. There's a lot more underwriting to overcome. And so being able to apply when you're healthy is very important. Even if you're not exactly healthy, it doesn't mean you can't get it. It just means that you might have to pay a higher rate because you're a bit more of a risk to take on. But if you can get approved, that is the number one key thing. Although Lacy and I specialize in helping the agricultural community implement the infinite banking process, because by sheer fact that we have our life insurance license, we are able to offer and do support 100%, educating and advocating for anyone to get critical illness.
Welcome to the WinEH podcast. This show is focused on empowering ranchers. Whether you're a seasoned rancher or just getting started, we'll guide you on how to use the infinite banking concept as an alternative way to finance your operations. It's a better way to think about money. Join us as we discuss planning for the future, attracting the next generation, and the art of keeping more money within the family. Here's your hosts, Winnie and Lacy.
Hello, thank you so much for leaning in with us today. We are live here at the Soil and Health Grazing Conference 2024, and everyone's just getting ready to pile back in to the room. So you'll notice that the noise will simmer down here in just a moment.
Yeah, it's been an incredible few days here at the conference, and we've done lots of recording, lots of talking about agriculture and your finances, but we want to change our focus to something that has been in the local news this week.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the cost of a diagnosis.
Cancer diagnosis. Yeah.
Yeah, specifically they were speaking of cancer.
Yeah. Well, okay. I have to say this. They brought it to everyone's attention. It was like on the radio, it was on the news, and it's like, someone sharing about how much it costs to deal with the diagnosis of cancer, like all the parking bills, the medication and all that. No joke, right? But quite often, just like the news tends to bring up a problem with no solution, except for like a sudden hint of like, okay, so Alberta Health or the government doesn't cover all the costs.
Right. And so I saw this particular piece on the news and I heard it on the radio when I was driving up here. And then you pointed out like, okay, they're pointing out a problem, but they're not pointing us to a solution. And then it got me thinking, it was like, okay, they're pointing out the problem. Do we really want them in charge of the solution?
The government? No.
Yeah.
No. And that's what actually rubbed me the wrong way, because it was like, oh, is this like another sleight of hand where we need more government intervention, where we need to pay more taxes to pay for people who are sick, right? Mm-hmm. Not that, okay, like we all need help, but I'm telling, like, we want to share a solution. We don't all also want to complain about what's being complained about.
Yeah, exactly. So when it got us thinking, like, what is the solution? And so if you've listened to us or you know me personally, you know that I have personally walked down the cancer road. I have been through treatments. I've seen firsthand what it was like. Every cancer diagnosis and treatment is different. So I can only speak to what the experience was like for me in my particular situation. There are so many added costs. They do have a valid, like with this piece on the news, they do have a valid point. There is added cost of a diagnosis because so many things come with it. Like there are endless doctor's appointments that require, like you have to be off work, you have to eat, you have to get there, your transportation, you have to pay to park there, you have to have a support person with you. So some people are fortunate enough to have a support person who doesn't have to take time off of work, but what if they do?
And there's even extra costs, especially if you live rurally, and less if you live right within the city.
Yes, and sometimes your treatment is in a different location. For me, my treatment was I mean, I live rurally, so I still had to drive over an hour to my treatment. But sometimes treatment is hours and hours away. Sometimes treatment is in a different province. Like, that's why I guess I say, like, each cancer diagnosis is different and each treatment protocol is different. So I hope that that day never comes for anyone with that diagnosis, but I know that's not realistic either. It's going to come. And so what solution do we have to be, one, we always talk about being proactive. How can we be proactive in this situation?
So there's a couple of different things. I mean, Lacy, you can speak from personal experience, like even prior to becoming a client and then prior to doing business with me, there's a discussion that we had, in relation to what helps to create a strong financial foundation, whether in sickness or whether in injury, right? Because there's costs to, like, when you get injured too. But, like, and sickness can come in different forms. It can come in the form of a heart attack, all those things. And believe it or not, the solution has been under our noses for decades, for all of us Canadians. And it happens to be called critical illness insurance. And just by the sounds of it, it sounds like only in times of critical injury or no critical illness. But it actually, if you look at a comprehensive critical illness coverage, can be critical injury too, right? Like anything from paralysis to severe burns to blindness, losing limbs, that sort of thing. So critical illness coverage is something that you want to take a look at. You can't get it when, what a friend used to say, you can't get fire insurance while the house is on fire, and you certainly can't get critical illness coverage when you're already sick. Yeah. So the time to really get it is in prevention, and that's something that you did. You got it.
Yeah, we did. So when we became clients of WinEH, part of implementing building that strong financial foundation was critical illness insurance. And so we did put that in place. I was healthy my entire life. The cancer diagnosis really came out of left field because other than a broken limb and childbirth, I had never been hospitalized.
Yeah, it was just like right before you turned 40, right?
I was 40.
40 already?
I was 40. So yeah, right out of left field, started having a little symptom. Maybe I should get it checked out. I have an amazing family doctor who's very thorough, and I thank him for his thoroughness because possibly, could have been just overlooked. And so, long story short, in the end, I was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. So that, if you're not familiar with diagnosis and stages, so that means that the cancer had spread beyond the original site, and I had lymph node involvement. So the dirty little bugger did try to spread into my entire body. So surgery, I had a complete bowel resection, and then I was hit really hard with oral and IV chemo. So, however, we were able to walk through that entire situation with financial peace. And I stress that financial piece. Like, I wouldn't say we walked through the whole thing with peace because it's a very scary thing to hear the C word. But we did walk through it with financial peace because we knew we had this coverage on myself. And in the end, it did end up paying me out. And so...
and it's tax-free.
Yeah, so it's a tax-free lump sum payment of whatever coverage amount that suits you or that you choose, that we help you set up. And so that payment did allow us to take on the extra cost of that diagnosis. So there was not one appointment that I was alone. My husband Reed was able to be at my surgery day, every chemo treatment. He was adamant about being there. And there are added costs. Like I said, there's fuel, there's travel. Sometimes you might have to stay overnight. I was fortunate that I didn't have to stay overnight because we got my infusion time down to 2.5 hours. And so long as everything went good, I was able to be home the same day. But yeah, there's...
And then his time off.
His time off of work.
Your time off.
The transportation, lodging, if you have to have accommodations, food, and not to mention... So yes, under our government health care, my chemo treatments were covered. But that doesn't cover the added medications that you take. I had steroids, I had nausea meds, I had a counter full of just things that I may need along the way through those treatments, and every little thing costs money. So the lump sum payment from the critical illness did allow us to have no financial burden. We were able to provide for me and for our family whatever may be needed during those treatments and recovery. And it even went as far as a house cleaner because we just needed that extra help.
So I think the bottom line is, okay, so the problem being presented in the news and on the radio in this past week about it costs, and it's almost like this big, huge hint. It's like, no, the government needs to come up for more money to pay, help with these costs. And then, it's like, it's not reasonable.
Yeah,
It's not reasonable when it can be done for so much less without impacting the rest of Canadians.
And it can play a part in your financial independence.
100%.
Yeah.
We get you may not agree, but it is not healthy to make the government the only solution when there's a need for something financial. It literally immediately disempowers us financially. It immediately really produces a complacent mindset. Number two, it's not a good road to come down, and we don't want to keep handing over the power. Anyways,
because hands down, if we put this decision into the hands of the government,
Yeah.
they are going to decide how much money you need to incur those costs of treatment. Let me tell you, they don't know. Every family is different. Every cancer diagnosis is different. With this option of critical illness coverage,
no receipt is quite required.
And you're able to sit with us as your advisors for us to build something that is tailored to you. We look at your financial picture. We look at the role that you play in your finances in your family. We look at everything to decide and come up with a recommendation that suits you. The government's not going to do that. They're going to blanket us all and oh, okay, well, you get X amount of money, but we don't care that you have to drive 2 hours to your treatment. It's just that's a rabbit hole, but.
Yeah, and let's focus on this. How many years did you pay into your coverage?
I paid 2 years into my coverage.
Did you pay on an annual basis or a monthly basis?
Annual.
Okay, and approximately how much was it? Do you recall the annual cost?
$436.
$436. Okay, so there's different ranges, right? You can either pay for term or permanent coverage for critical illness. This was term.
This was a 10-year term policy.
Yep. And so that means that every 10 years, the cost will change and incrementally increase. It can always be switched to something permanent. Okay, so nonetheless, let's just call it $450. We'll round it up. So you paid, in general, $900.
Yes.
And had at least into the 5 or 6 figures.
6 figures.
6 figures in tax-free return. Okay,
Yep.
So you tell me what's better. I think it's very much a rhetorical question. But if you had to solve the problem when you needed money for something like an illness, do you want to spend dollar for dollar out of your savings or even borrow on credit to solve the problem? Or would you rather have some sort of coverage in place that actually worked? This is actually a successful case that insurance does work when you need it. And of course, this only works if you're willing to go see a doctor and have it medically verified, because this is the only way that it's going to get, a doctor had to sign off and say, yes,
absolutely.
Lacy does have stage 3, blah, 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 cancer, right? But if you're not willing to see a doctor to get that, then just stop listening and turn it off. But
Yeah, absolutely. And my family doctor, my surgeon, both had to sign off. Medical records were provided. But in the end, yes, we were so grateful that we had this coverage because we were proactive, thinking that we would never use it. And if I'm being completely honest with you, when I paid the second premium, I actually thought, do I really need to pay this? Because we were in a place that we were financially strapped for a bit. And then I'm like, Winnie will slap my hand if I don't pay this premium, and I know I need to pay it. And so I did. And I'm forever grateful for that because we did need it, and it came in very handy at a time like just a really hard year for our family.
Again, everyone's different. I mean, sometimes you can pay years into this and not use it, but like even if Lacy had paid into this for 10 years, 450 times 10 years, right?
Yeah, and
It's still
so worth it.
Yeah.
Because it's like that saying like, well, if you have it, you won't need it. And if you need it, you won't have it type of thing. And I was really glad that I had it.
And like just let me be clear too, like for those of you who may or may not know a ton about how insurance underwriting goes, critical illness is tougher to get than life insurance. There's a lot more underwriting to overcome. And so being able to apply when you're healthy is very important. Even if you're not exactly healthy, it doesn't mean you can't get it. It just means that you might have to pay a higher rate because you're a bit more of a risk to take on. But if you can get approved, that is the number one key thing.
Absolutely.
And although Lacy and I specialize in helping the agricultural community implement the infinite banking process, because by sheer fact that we have like our life insurance license, we are able to offer and do support 100%, educating and advocating for anyone to get critical illness.
Even kids, like more so like I shouldn't say more so, but everyone, even kids. There's babies that are less than 1 year old whose families have included critical illness.
Yeah. So solution is, what are the solutions? You can you can try advocating and waiting for the government to do something about it for you. You can use 100% of your dollars or 100% of your credit solving the problem. You can go on GoFundMe.
GoFundMe, yep.
Yep, GoFundMe, have benefit raisers, go to your family, go to your friends and ask for financial help. But truthfully, that's not a pleasant way to do it either.
No, it's not empowering.
No. So honestly, the best solution, a very cost-effective solution, is getting and looking at critical illness coverage. And that is a very viable, very cost-effective solution to solve for an issue like this. So
yeah. And I guess one thing just to speak like the GoFundMe, like how it's not empowering, 100% people are always willing to help and to give. And that's never going to change. Like I'm one of those people. I'm always willing to help and to give where it's needed. This is just one thing, one step further that we can do to promote that financial independence. And yeah, I just had to throw that piece in there.
Gotcha.
So thanks for tuning in. We really appreciate you. Questions, comments, feedback. Check us out on our website or send us an email. Thank you.
So glad you leaned in with us on the WinEH podcast. We truly hope you're feeling more informed and empowered to take another step towards optimizing your financial life. Right now, make sure you hit subscribe so you can keep growing and learning with us. Until next time, we wish you prosperity in every area of your life.